What happens when authority is misused? Today, we explore a story that shows how pride and power can lead to unintended consequences. Two officers, one seasoned, the other fresh out of the academy, were called into a meeting with the head of internal affairs. The rookie fidgeted nervously, while the older officer leaned back, exuding false confidence. The head of internal affairs, a stern woman with years of experience, began, "Do you know why you're here?" The rookie opened his mouth, but the veteran interrupted. "Look, whatever this is, I've been on the job for 20 years. I know how to handle things." The head of internal affairs raised an eyebrow. "Handle things? Like you handled last night's incident?" The veteran stiffened, his bravado fading. Turns out, the rookie had filed a report about their partner's mishandling of a minor arrest, a situation that escalated unnecessarily because of the officer's pride. The rookie had done the right thing, and now the veteran was facing disciplinary action. As they left, the rookie learned this: respect comes from integrity, not power. And the veteran? He realized that pride can blind even the most experienced to their own mistakes. Stick around to see how this story unfolds, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more compelling stories like this. John Tinsley sat in the passenger seat of the patrol car, his uniform crisp, his eyes scanning the road eagerly. Young and fresh out of training, he was determined to prove himself, a rookie ready to play everything by the book. Beside him sat Hank Allen, a gruff veteran officer whose years on the job had turned his instincts into his guiding principle. Skeptical of rules and paperwork, Hank preferred action over procedure. They were parked at a quiet highway exit, their squad car hidden behind a cluster of trees. It was the kind of place where drivers often let their guard down, pushing the speed limit. For John, this was an opportunity to show what he'd learned. For Hank, it was just another day of keeping things simple. As a car sped past, John perked up. Got one. 75 in a 55 zone. Hank barely looked up, his voice calm but dismissive. Relax, kid. If we pulled over everyone doing 75, we'd never get a break. John frowned but stayed quiet. He'd been trained to follow the rules, but today, he would soon learn that working alongside Hank meant walking a very different line between duty and judgment. The quiet hum of the highway was broken as a sleek black van approached, its tinted windows concealing the driver within. Hank Allen's eyes narrowed, his gut instantly setting off alarms. He straightened in his seat. "Pull that van over, John." John Tinsley glanced at the speedometer on his radar. "It's not speeding. No violations. Nothing suspicious." Hank shook his head, his tone firm. "Trust me, kid. Something's off. Just pull it over." Reluctantly, John flicked on the lights and eased the patrol car onto the road, signaling the van to the shoulder. His hands trembled slightly on the wheel. He'd been taught to have a reason for every stop. This felt wrong. The van slowed and stopped. Hank stepped out first, his confidence masking the uncertainty brewing underneath. As the driver's window rolled down, Hank froze. Sitting calmly behind the wheel was Thomas Lancer, the sharp-eyed head of internal affairs. "Afternoon, Officer Allen," Lancer said coolly, his voice heavy with authority. John's heart sank. Neither officer realized they'd just pulled over the one man who could make or break their careers. Hank Allen strode to the driver's window, his posture rigid, authority radiating from him. "License and registration," he said curtly, his tone edged with suspicion. The driver handed over his ID without a word, his calm demeanor unnerving. Hank barely glanced at it, but John, standing slightly behind, caught a glimpse of the name. Thomas Lancer. His stomach flipped. The Thomas Lancer, head of internal affairs. John's voice faltered as he whispered, "Hank, I think this guy's—" Hank cut him off with a dismissive wave, still playing the tough cop. We're just doing our job here, sir. Mind telling me where you're headed? Lancer's gaze met Hank's, steady and unshaken. Is there a reason for this stop, Officer Allen? His words were smooth, almost casual, but carried a weight that made John's palms sweat. John shifted nervously, feeling the power shift in the interaction. Lancer wasn't arguing or raising his voice. He didn't need to. His calm, authoritative presence said it all. This wasn't going to be a regular stop. Hank's suspicion only grew as Thomas Lancer sat there, cool and collected. Without evidence or a clear reason, Hank's voice sharpened. "Step out of the vehicle, sir. We're going to need to search the car." Lancer's brow lifted slightly, his calm unbroken. "Search? On what grounds, Officer Allen?" John Tinsley froze, his breath caught in his throat. He shifted nervously beside Hank, his training screaming at him. There was no probable cause, no violation. This wasn't right. John glanced at Hank, his senior officer, whose face was set with stubborn determination. "Hank," he muttered softly, hoping to pull him back. But Hank ignored him, doubling down. "Just a routine check. Standard procedure," Hank said briskly, though his tone carried more insistence than explanation. John's pulse quickened. This was a line he wasn't sure he could cross. He wanted to trust Hank's experience, but his gut told him this was wrong. Caught between the authority of his partner and the rules he swore to uphold, John stood paralyzed, torn by the weight of his own conscience. Lancer unbuckled his seatbelt and stepped out slowly, his voice cutting through the tension. "Careful, officer. Sometimes it's those who overstep who find themselves under the microscope." John swallowed hard. The warning hung heavy in the air, but Hank didn't flinch. He was too far in now to back down. Hank's jaw tightened as he swept through the inside of the van, rifling through compartments and checking under seats. The cabin was spotless, nothing out of place. Still, his gut wouldn't let it go. He straightened and turned toward Lancer. "Pop the trunk." Lancer remained poised, hands relaxed at his sides. His gaze was steady as he replied, "If you insist, Officer Allen." The trunk clicked open, and Hank yanked it upward, expecting something, anything, to justify his suspicions. Instead, he found neat stacks of files, a briefcase, and office supplies. Work materials. Nothing more. John exhaled shakily, his unease deepening. He knew this had gone too far. Lancer stepped forward, reached calmly into his coat, and pulled out his badge, holding it up for both officers to see. "Thomas Lancer, Head of Internal Affairs. I think we're done here, gentlemen." Hank froze, his face pale, the weight of the moment crashing down on him. John stared at the badge, his stomach sinking further. Lancer's voice was calm but cutting. "Overstepping authority without cause? I'll make sure this stop gets the attention it deserves." John looked away, ashamed, as Hank stood speechless, realizing his instincts had led him straight into the spotlight he'd hoped to avoid. Lancer's eyes were unwavering as he looked at Hank and John. The tension hung thick in the air, and his voice cut through it with quiet authority. "You both need to understand the weight of your actions," Lancer said, his tone firm yet measured. "You're here to uphold justice, not to abuse your power for personal reasons. This stop wasn't routine. It was overreach." Hank shifted uncomfortably, but Lancer's words held him in place. "Justice isn't just a word. It's what holds us all to account," Lancer continued, locking eyes with Hank. "You've forgotten that, Officer Allen, and now you'll have to answer for it." John stood quietly, torn between respect for Lancer's words and the growing disappointment in Hank. Hank's defiant posture started to soften. He swallowed hard, realizing the full extent of his mistake. His pride crumbled as the reality of the consequences dawned on him. This wasn't just a misstep. It was a breach of trust. And as the weight of Lancer's statement settled in, Hank finally understood that some lines, once crossed, couldn't be uncrossed. As Lancer straightened, preparing to leave, his final words echoed with quiet authority. "Next time, think twice before pulling someone over without cause," he said, his gaze briefly settling on Hank. His tone was calm, but the weight of his warning was unmistakable. Hank stood silent, the sting of Lancer's words hitting hard. He'd crossed a line, and now the consequences would follow. Lancer turned to John, his expression softening. "You did your job, kid. You tried to do the right thing. That's what matters here." John's chest tightened, a mix of relief and newfound respect filling him. Lancer's acknowledgement was a reminder that sometimes doing what's right meant standing up for integrity, even when it's difficult. "Remember," Lancer added, a final piece of advice, "balancing respect with authority is what makes a good officer. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." As Lancer walked away, John felt the weight of that lesson settle deep within him. Authority had to be earned, and integrity was the foundation it stood upon. As the story unfolds, it serves as a powerful reminder. Authority comes with responsibility. The actions of both Hank and John highlight how easily power can be misused, but also how essential accountability is in preserving trust and justice. Hank's moment of pride and overreach shows how abusing power undermines justice, while Lancer's unwavering commitment to the truth reminds us that accountability ensures trust. In the end, the lesson is clear. Being in a position of authority isn't just about wielding power. It's about upholding the principles of fairness and integrity. What would you do in a similar situation? Think about it. Would you stand by the rules, even if it meant going against your partner? Or would you let pride cloud your judgment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and share it with your friends. It's a story that reminds us of the power of integrity and accountability. Subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell for more fascinating stories like this one. We've got plenty more coming your way, so you won't want to miss out. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.